Welcome to the latest episode of Fatigued But Not Forgotten, a new series under the NFF banner. In these mini episodes, or minisodes if you will, one host will pick one film that has never received a franchise or series and make an impromptu pitch on why the film deserves a franchise and maybe, just maybe, pitch a follow-up to it. The other host then must play the devil's advocate and argue why the film does not deserve a franchise. Your two hosts tonight are myself, Matt Reifschneider, and I am joined by my co-host for the evening, Sean Caylor. How are you doing tonight, Sean?
Got a little cabin fever.
Little cabin fever. I feel like I'm craving some pancakes. Pancakes. No,
Uh,
no. Are you craving some pancakes? I just cut off all the skin off my legs while shaving. So I feel like we've had this discussion before. Maybe it was in our Eli Roth episode.
maybe.
Is that a is that maybe a hint? Because for the audience out there, one of us will be pitching a movie, and tonight is Sean's turn to pitch a movie for a franchise. Maybe it's an Eli Roth movie. Is this a hint towards what you're going to pitch me?
I'd say technically, I think every Eli Roth movie has a franchise. He didn't necessarily stick with it, but I think they've all franchised.
To some extent, because even Knock Knock was technically a remake. So
I guess House with Clock and Walls, but that's only 2 years old, so that's not old enough to have anything yet. And as I recall, was reasonably successful.
yeah, I guess Green Inferno, because they talked about a sequel for forever and never did it. So that might be the one. Which is the one that deserves a sequel, is the one that doesn't have one. So it is what it is. But so for our audience tonight, this is kind of a game that we like to play. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet for y'all. But I just want to let you know that you guys are going to be the judge on this. So for the first 5 minutes of this episode, Sean is going to pitch you guys on why this franchise should exist. And then I'm going to have to convince you why it shouldn't exist. Now, that being said, these are movies without a franchise. So the person who's playing the devil's advocate might actually have the easier job here. But let's be honest, the most fun that we're going to have is just, berating each other. That's going to be the best part of this series. So why don't we just get started? Why don't we start the clock, Sean? And why don't you hit me with Fatigued But Not Forgotten?
And start. Okay, so I think that the best movie we could start this all off with is a personal love of mine. And I want you to just take your mind back to the wiki wild west.
Oh my God.
So here's the thing. This movie is so much better than you remember. It is a very deep, personal, passionate love of mine. The villain has a character whose entire purpose is to... Sorry, the villain has a henchman whose entire purpose is to read people's lips at a long distance, and her name is Miss Lippen Reader. She deserves her own movie, just first and foremost. That is the most amazing pun. 2, giant mechanical steampunk spider. And yes, we've all heard the Kevin Smith, John Peters story, but you know what? It's a pretty kick-ass third act. Specific defenses aside, and kind of even light ribbing aside, remembering that I'm on a timer that I myself suggested, the deal is that, first and foremost, there's enough in the television series that they could have pulled. There were other regular villains. There was more to pull from, not the least of which being Count Manzeppi, who was a black magician. I always thought that was kind of cool, and I'd have loved to see Will Smith. A lot of people really complained that the main thing that didn't work in the movie was Will Smith and Kevin Kline kind of butting heads the whole time, because we didn't get the version of Jim West and Gordon that people grew up with, but they do coalesce at the end of the movie and they are buddies. And frankly, they get to skip the origin movie problem inherently with a second movie. But I think there is enough of an interesting steampunk world that was built there. And I gotta say, like, there's a fair number of westerns, but westerns have gone the way of the. I think what I'm trying to say is westerns kind of are the realm of the kind of serious drama right now, and it's kind of an indie thing. And there aren't a lot of fun, kind of exciting popcorn movie westerns. The last people that even tried were Disney with that whatever the hell that's excuse me, Lone Ranger movie was, which was just complete joke, complete garbage. Which I know some people would argue Wild Wild West was as well, but okay. In terms of continuing the franchise, I also would say we've gotten Will Smith back. Will Smith worked. Will Smith always works. The man is just a font of charisma, and his Jim West was a lot of fun. I don't think Kevin Kline necessarily works as well, and Gordon is probably the weakest part of the movie altogether, but you know what? Yeah, the annoying sidekick is the realm of the early aughts action movie, and I find that acceptable. Oh boy, time comes up fast. Um, and what I'm saying is, I think a second one of these movies where you get someone in there who really plays up the charisma, the funny, the laughs, and really, really big set pieces because there aren't really any other viable steampunk properties. And I think that's an interesting visual aesthetic that did not even get the respect it deserved at the time it came out. Yes, Gordon's motorcycle was stupid, but it was pretty steampunk. And 1 second, that's my time.
Thank God that's your time. That's all I got to say about that. So I have essentially 3 minutes. So hold on, hold on. I just want to address, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would like to address that my co-host here, Sean, has made this inaugural episode incredibly easy for me on why this movie shouldn't exist. So, if you would like to start the timer, there's only a few things I would like to point out in your initial statement that I feel like would sway the jury my way. Tell me when you hit start.
Go.
You tell me that this is a movie that deserves more attention than it's been getting. I will tell you that its curtain Rotten Tomatoes score from critics is a whopping 17%. And that's not necessarily something you would judge for the people. Its audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 28% out of over 450,000 ratings. It has a 28%. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when you partner this with the fact that this film not only was critically panned, but panned by audiences, and it had a budget of 170 million, and while it did $222 million in the box office, if you take 25% of that number, because that's the 25% of people who liked this movie, who would go back to see this movie, you could not produce a follow-up to Wild Wild West 2, Wickedy Wickedy Wickedy, and be able to produce that with any kind of a budget that would suffice to be able to pull this off. Not to mention, we are talking, this film is now 21 years old. we have long lost that 25% audience, I think, at this point, because the younger generation has not bought into Wild Wild West. I would argue that the generation when it came out had not bought into Wild Wild West because it was so far removed from the TV show. Secondly, I would like to address your point about the cast. Yes, Will Smith is a fountain of charisma, and he has proven such in Aladdin, which has kind of struck a comeback for him in a lot of ways. But again, 21 years past the prime, and then you have Kevin Kline with this, who, for the most part, hasn't been doing a lot of films. And on top of that, I'm not sure he would want to reprise the role that he was nominated for Worst Supporting or Worst Actor at the Raspberries, at the Razzie Awards, and won a Razzie Award for Worst On-Screen Couple with Will Smith. I just want to point that out. I would also like to point out, not that the Razzies are a great thing, but this movie won 8 Razzie Awards the year it came out. Incredible numbers. Jack and Jill numbers there. I just want to point that out. So between its budgetary constraints by being 21 years old, the fact that it has an aging cast at this point, even though Selma Hayek is still incredible looking as ever, she has aged to perfection. Between that and the fact that nobody liked it when it came out and they will not come back, I would suggest to the jury that no studio should ever touch this franchise ever again. Time.
Wow. Boy, before I respond to that. So, this is our inaugural episode, and we have not fully worked out the kinks yet. However, this section we believe is going to be open debate for a few minutes, where we're just going to yell at each other a little bit, and then we'll leave it to you to tell us who's right.
I also
And
want to point out, though, that I did give you the benefit of the doubt and give you a great title with Wild Wild West 2, Wickety 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 Wild. I think that that is a great title for a sequel.
I want your instinct to make fun of the Wild Wild West song is always going to be folly, and here's why. It's the song so good it broke up Drew Hill and it gave us Cisco's solo career, which is true. And that solo career brought us the thong song. I rest my case.
You rest your case. I rest my case because one of the Razzies it won was Worst Original Song, Wild Wild West.
Two, Will Smith, for one, if he was game and we could get him back for this, you're telling me 20 years have gone by. I'm telling you, old man Jim West. That's what I'm telling you. Three, I mean, come on. You're going above and beyond the Call of Duty and saying that this version of Wild Wild West is so bad they should never even attempt a reboot. Sir, this movie is great. I completely refuse you and the audience's opinion on this.
And critics and everyone. Pretty sure the cast has nothing good to say about this. We should ask Barry Sonnenfeld about whether or not this movie, as it essentially killed his career.
Again, though, from my opening statement, I would like to re-emphasize, however, and you didn't touch on this because you know it's a good point. That steampunk cowboy aesthetic is really great, and it was really unique. Even, I mean, I can't even think of another thing that is that openly steampunk in a blockbuster movie. Maybe that Mortal Instruments movie from a couple years back, but oof.
Oh,
Oof.
I will secede that a steampunk western is a fantastic aesthetic to have. But as we have learned, aesthetics make not a movie good. You can
Um,
get buy
Sir,
on aesthetics.
I will say that Baz Luhrmann has made an entire goddamn career on aesthetic over skill. Thank you. As a matter of
I
fact, Baz Luhrmann for Wild Wild West 2, Wild Wild West harder.
yeah. Are you trying to pitch me that not only do you want to make a Wild Wild West 2 Wickedy 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 Wild, but you want to make a Wild Wild West 2 Wickedy 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 Wild, which is really hard to say 2 times in a row. You want to make it with Baz Luhrmann in the director's seat?
Uh, yeah, did you see Australia? That, but with Jim West.
I did see Australia. I saw all 3 films that were jammed into Australia. Every act of that movie is a different genre. It's like fish out of water comedy, western, war film, all in one.
I am talking about the Western part,
Yeah,
obviously.
obviously, where Hugh Jackman dumps a bucket of water on his like glistening body at one point.
Of course, before Hubert Jackman releases a bunch of prisoners of war. Yeah.
Yeah. So riddle me this, Batman. If we are going to make a Wild Wild West 2, the first question a studio is going to ask you is, who for? Who are we going to make this movie for?
To which I rebut Dick Tracy. Proves that one man can honestly swing his dick around hard enough to get it made, regardless of if it's for anyone or not.
That this is true. I'm just not sure that anyone involved with the Wild Wild West franchise has enough dick swinging power to be able to pull that off. And just saying that out loud, I just realized how ridiculous that statement was. But
I don't
like,
know. Okay.
I'm just saying, I just don't think that there's anybody involved because at best, even in 1999, you could argue that it was Will Smith that had that power, and he couldn't pull it off with this movie.
I disagree. I say go back and rewatch this movie. You will find that I am right.
This is true. This is true. You know what? I'm tempted to give you the benefit of the doubt and rewatch this movie, but there's just only so much humor from 1999 that I can take where men dress in women's clothes and it's played as a joke.
Says a Monty Python fan.
Yes. And all I'm going to say is that I don't believe Monty Python should ever be brought back out from the 70s and early 80s. They are perfectly fine right then and there for that. So, you know what? I'm not sure I have any last statements on this. I mean, I feel like you made this a little bit too easy for me and the jury out there on whether or not this is something that should be approached. And maybe the jury out there has a really clever idea for a pitch for Wild Wild West 2 Wickedy 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 Wild. I'd be curious to hear a pitch on it, on what that story is.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it doesn't even have Will Smith. Maybe it's just Will Smith's son, and you get Michael B. Jordan to do it.
Or, like I said, old man Jim West. Make it like Logan.
Yeah. Make it like Logan, which is like R-rated, hard R, Western, Shane. Great stuff. But I guess, do you have any parting words before we leave it out to the jury to decide whether or not Wild Wild West should be franchised?
No, search your hearts. You know it to be true. This movie is better than you remember. And you know what? I mean, just like any given blockbuster, you can slap almost any story on it. What we're really looking for is like big spectacle, big fun, and the characters are already established. What more could you possibly want? It's perfect franchise fodder from this starting point. That's what I think.
And I think for my final statement to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury is that, like the villain of this movie, there's not a lot of love out there. It's very loveless. And I think that that should be considered when pitching this film to a studio. And with that, we are closing this book on Fatigued but Not Forgotten, because Sean is out here blowing the trumpet for fucking Wild Wild West.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you have been a couple of producers trapped in a stuck elevator with us, and now I gotta know, did I turn your heart on this franchise? Are you guys gonna give this one more shot, or are you gonna let Matt shut it down again forever, never to be made again? His words.
Never to be made again. You could give it one more shot, but I'm pretty sure Wild Wild West is shooting blanks. So I'm just gonna keep going with this shit. You just keep feeding me this stuff. I'm gonna throw in a 6-shooter pretty soon. We're gonna call it there. So thank you so much for listening, guys. You will check us out. We have another episode coming later this month of this same concept of Fatigued but Not Forgotten. Of course, it will be a surprise to everyone, including Sean, as I will be pitching a movie to Sean that I believe should be franchised. So thank you so much, everybody. If you get a chance, go see our back catalog at anchor.fm or anywhere where you can listen to. Please rate, review, and subscribe to No Franchise Fatigue. And once again, you know what, guys, reach out to us. Let us know what movies you think need to be franchised, because maybe I'll step up to the bat, pick one of the ones you did to pitch to Sean. Thank you so much. Have a good night.